course, we don't know that until budget night, once council has their opportunity to go through the documents and decide what are priorities, whether they want to make additions, what things should be subtracted or substituted. So the initial proposal in the budget documents that you will receive shows a city side increase of 1.6%. And those are the things that are directly within the control of the administration sitting next to me here at this table. There are ABC pressures, so the agencies, boards, and commissions, some of which we have no direct control, or these folks have no direct control over, and there's an increase request of 1.7% on the agency, board, and commission side. So, for example, Windsor Police Services requesting $5.5 million increase. It's a 6.6% budget increase. Windsor Essex Community Housing looking for $469,000 increase. Our land ambulance costs are going up by almost $200,000. The health unit, which is completely out of the discretion of myself, council, or anyone in administration to control that budget, is a request of 5%, or I'll round it up, $150,000. Handy Transit making an $81,000 request, and the Windsor Symphony asking for an additional $25,000 for their operations. So again, 2008 we were at $412 million in terms of the levy. 2018 we were at $403.6 million, and the levy request for 2019 $416 million. As we said, the 7-year capital budget shows a spend of $845 million. And on the capital side, again, it's a 7-year plan, road, sewer, and transportation infrastructure making up the bulk of that. And there are some highlights on the capital side, and I'd like to share some of those with you now. There's new money in the budget for the widening of Banwell Road. There's new money for the widening of Dominion Road from Northwood to Taunton. That will correspond, or should correspond nicely with the intersection improvements that were already funded and will start to take place this year. We have also heard, in part of the campaign, I talked about reconstruction on Ypres and finishing that project, so there was money in the budget to move forward and complete the last section of Ypres, which is between Forest and Walker, and get that reconstruction done for a very well-used very well-used roadway. Folks who across the city, who go to Lowe's or go to Costco and travel down Provincial Road, understand the frustration and the condition of that road. So there's money in this budget to widen Provincial Road from Cabana to Walker. And the EA has already been completed. It was completed many years ago. The intersection, of course, was improved several years ago, and Cabana Road, of course, widening will continue for the next probably 7 years, I believe. But this is great for Provincial Road and will certainly benefit residents throughout the city who use that very well-traveled roadway to get to some stores that are widely used in the community. There was also inclusions of money for branding, and you know, we're not talking about, let me be very clear on this, we're not talking about the creation of a new logo in the city of Windsor. Could that be something that comes from it? Probably, but that's really not the emphasis, to try and, you know, create a new W for the city of Windsor and you know, have everyone to get new stationery and letterhead. That's not the focus here. The branding money that is being put in is really to make sure that we can attract the talent and get folks to come to the city of Windsor, to work in the city of Windsor, to support employers here. And we know we've struggled for many years with respect to the old image of the city of Windsor, I will call it, where people have an impression of what life is like here, or what life used to be like here. And you know, when I spent 3 years in law school, where 97% of the population was from the GTA, after 3 years, 99% of those 97% all thought Windsor was a great place because they had a chance to live here. We know all the folks that we brought here for sport tourism, and some of the criticism I received and my predecessor received with respect to sport tourism initiatives. We do it because it's great for the community, but we do it because there's a natural byproduct or offshoot that allows thousands of people to come here, experience the best of what Windsor has to offer, and then go home and act as you know, really unintended ambassadors and really talk positively about our community. And we've seen that happen. But when it comes to what we're seeing with Quicken Loans, when it comes to challenges that folks at AAR are experiencing at the airport, it's not about jobs not here. It's about making sure that we can get the talent to support the employers. And so the request here is really for a coordinated effort to help support talent acquisition in the city of Windsor, and part of that really relates to branding of the city. And this is not something new. In fact, council approved branding as a concept in the 2015 20-year plan, or the 20-year plan that we completed in 2015. And so I didn't bring anything forward for the last 4 years because the timing wasn't right, but we know with Quicken Loans coming and the opportunities that exist there, timing is right, so that money is in the budget. There's also money for additional splash pads. In the city of Windsor, 3 splash pads are being funded or requested in this capital budget. We talked about the enhancements to sewer funding, about $9.6 million. And you should know that there are, with respect to this budget, $4.5 million. Times are good in Windsor right now. We know that. There are $4.5 million in new assessment growth in the city of Windsor. So that is new residential stock, commercial, industrial that has been built that is adding net gains to the property tax assessment in the city of Windsor. So very, very positive. 2 other things from strat planning. You will find them, I would say, generally absent from the budget, but really I want to bring it up to you to let you know that that this is not intentional. It's really a function of when we completed strat planning and when the documents were starting to be printed. And so 2 issues that we still need to address are economic development. That plan is forthcoming. I'm meeting currently with all city councilors to get their feedback and developing the plan for economic diversification, economic development to bring forward, and tree trimming. So one of the number 1 issue, I would say one of the top 2 issues that was raised at strategic planning related to tree canopy or canopy growth, but also to tree trimming. And if we look at, over the last several years, if we look at the responses from 311, the reasons why people call 311, the number 1 complaint is requests for tree trimming or stump removal of city-owned trees. And our backlog continues to grow. So we've set behind the scenes a policy in motion approved by City Council that calls for a 7-year tree trimming throughout the city. But we have a backlog that we need to catch up on, and there will be money you will see come forward before we discuss this budget on April the 1st to deal with tree trimming. On the operating budget side, let me talk about some of the pressures that we've seen. So salary and benefit adjustments of almost $7 million, a little over 1.8% on the tax roll, $7 million for salary and benefits alone. $1.5 million increase we're requesting from operating to capital. So this is to fund additional capital projects, and really it's to deal with inflation. And so we know a number of the projects that we put out lately have come back over budget. And we weren't anticipating that, but they've come back because costs have gone up and we have to be able to keep up with inflation. So it's a $1.5 million request transfer from operating to capital, which is great news for the capital budget. We're also seeing WSIB costs related to fire. We're expecting $1 million, and there's $1 million baked into this budget on the operating side to deal with changes in provincial legislation on the WSIB side. So there are additional cancers that have been added that are deemed cancers under WSIB for firefighters who suffer from certain types of cancers. Additional cancers are added, and we have to be able to fund the cost of that. We've added $100,000 on trail maintenance improvements, and this comes directly from our Parks Master Plan, but also from the feedback we've received from the public on public requests for trail maintenance. We're seeing pressures and issues at the Windsor International Aquatic and Training Center and the Transit Windsor downtown bus terminal. And when I say issues, I mean issues requiring enhanced security. So there's money being requested for enhanced security at both of those locations to make sure that all of our guests can be safe and comfortable at those locations. There's also a request in this budget to make funding permanent for an outreach services position that council tried last year. So we put one-time funding forward to hire an outreach officer, an outreach worker that was working with Family Services Windsor Essex. We'd like to make that position permanent, so there's a request in the budget to do that. There is also a $500,000 one-time funding request to deal with the demand for emergency shelter services. So the City of Windsor pays certain service providers to deal with homeless issues and shelter issues. We also fund upwards, it was a little more than $400,000 in 2018, closer to $500,000 for hotels. And so, no one needs to sleep on the street in the City of Windsor, never, because the city will make sure that there is a place for everyone who's experiencing homelessness. But we're seeing a demand that requires a $500,000 funding increase to our emergency shelter program. There's also a $4 million increase, and for perspective, for folks who haven't sat through one of these sessions before, $4 million to us is 1% increase on property taxes, approximately. And so we're seeing we're requesting $4 million. We're calling it the increase for contingent liabilities, but we know that there are probably provincial changes coming that we need to start factoring in budget changes. We know that there are certain litigation efforts out there, and some of these things we don't have funding for. We've never set funding aside. We still think, from a legal perspective on all of our legal matters that we have a strong position, but to protect taxpayers, it's about making sure that we have a reserve set up that if there is some resolution to some of these matters, or if there's some changes on the provincial side with respect to funding that we receive today, that we're in a position to buffer what may happen in the future. And if those things never happen, then the beauty is we'll have a great funding source to put into the capital budget and to complete more projects. I know many of you have heard, and we've talked about transit, specifically the pressures on the transit system, and I'm looking at the Dominion 5 and the South Windsor 7. St. Clair College has experienced a huge increase in international student enrollment in the last year, and we did the best that we could, not knowing that that was going to happen when it did, to deal with the effects on the transit system. So there's $275,000 being requested in this budget for transit enhancements, specifically around the Dominion 5 and the South Windsor 7. And there has been one thing that we've talked about as chair of the Public Library Board. I can say we had a good discussion about operating hours of our libraries, and it's inconsistent across the system. So if we look at Fridays as an example, some libraries are closed Fridays, some are open, and I think for our customers, it just doesn't, they don't know which branch is open, and it's just not ideal. So we're asking for $100,000 to open all of our branches on Fridays and make it consistent around the city of Windsor. So those are really sort of the high-level things that I wanted to mention to you. One other thing on the capital side that I would mention is the Meadowbrook housing project that council approved, actually just this past Monday, we approved it. And that is, we've included the Meadowbrook housing project at $12 million, and we've funded that project in 2019 and 2020's budget to match the construction and therefore avoid the interim financing costs. So when Meadowbrook was built, we were the first city council, the last council in 30 years to make an investment in affordable housing. We've committed to that, and we've put our money where our mouth is. This council passed it at the last meeting of council just 2 days ago, and the financing costs have all been aligned to make sure that that project is fully funded from our perspective in the next 2 years. So we will not be carrying debt, or will not be certainly paying financing costs for the costs of the project once it's completed in the next 2 years. So those are the high-level points that I want.